Hi. I have a lot of books, but I do not know how many, and I don't know how many I haven't read yet, so that is what we're gonna find out today. We're gonna find out what my physical TBR is. I hope that it's at least 50% read. I hope so, but I'm a bit afraid that it's not gonna be. This is embarrassing right now. I'm actually having doubts about this video. I don't know if I want to put this online. If I have a very high percent of books unread on my shelves, that kind of means that I'm buying much more than I read, which is a problem. But it also means that I have a lot of books to look forward to. So it's one or the other, right? So I'm gonna take you along across my bookshelves to see how many books are read and still unread. I think I'm also gonna do a percentage per shelf of how many are unread and also per genre because I really like those statistics. So let's get started. I also have this TBR jar, which is not up to date anymore, I think. I've read some books in here, and I think there are also a lot of new books on my shelves that aren't in this jar yet. So we're gonna update the TBR jar as well today, so we can start off fresh 26, and I can use this jar again for Read It or Unhaul It or other challenges this year. Okay, let me zoom you a bit. Okay, so here are my bookshelves. I'm gonna do a detailed bookshelf tour later this year. So for now, we're just gonna count all of the unread books. I have pen and paper ready. I think we're just gonna start here. Here I have all of my classics. There are also 4 books here on top. I don't think you can see that. There are 2 Jane Austen bundles from which I have read a couple of the books, but not all of them. So I think I'm just gonna count them as one unread book. So on top of my bookcase, we have 4 unread books. All of which are classics. I think I'm gonna name this shelf 1, so help me remember that, and let's start counting. So The Shadow of the Wind I've read, The Importance of Being Earnest I've read, Professor I have not read, Great Expectations I haven't read, Middlemarch I have read, Tender is the Night I haven't read yet. I think most of my vintage editions I have read. If I start talking in between, I'm just gonna lose count, so let me focus. Pride and Prejudice I've read, Follett I haven't, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. That seems like a lot. Let me recount. I'm missing this one, so it's actually 17. Okay, so I haven't read 17 out of 25 books. 17 out of 25 books. Oh boy. Okay, so from shelf 1, I have not read 17 out of the 25 books on this shelf, which means I haven't read 68%, which is quite a lot. That's higher than my 50% that I was hoping for. Shelf 1 is a loss. Shelf 1 is a loss. It's more than 50%. So we're gonna move on to shelf 2 and hopefully get better results. I think I'm gonna name this shelf 2 and I'm gonna count like this. I think that makes the most sense for me. So this is also classics. This is most of my Penguin classics and my darker books, 20, 21, 22, 23. There are 23 books on this shelf. I've read Oscar Wilde, I've read White Nights, Letters to a Young Poet, one of my favorites. Meditations I haven't read yet. I haven't read The Brothers Karamazov, but it is a new addition to my shelves. I've read Crime and Punishment, I've read The Count of Monte Cristo, I've read The Iliad and The Odyssey. Okay, so on this shelf I have 2 editions of Jane Eyre, and I haven't read Jane Eyre yet, so I'm just gonna count it as 1 unread book. Or should I count it as 2 unread? Because otherwise it's gonna mess up the percentage as well, because I have a total of 23, which is including the second Jane Eyre. Maybe I should count it as unread as well. Maybe I should. And Dracula and Emma I've both read. So shelf 2 is actually looking better. I haven't read 11 out of 23. So let me calculate that. Okay, so on shelf 2, I've read 12 out of the 23 books. So 11 unread, which means it's a percentage of 48 unread books, which is below the 50% that we were aiming for. So that's a win, but it's not compensating for shelf 1 yet. But we have a lot of shelves left to go, so there is still hope. So let's continue to shelf 3, which I'm gonna make this one. Okay, I have to confess something. I've actually been stacking books in front of each other because I have no space left on my bookshelves. That's how bad it's gotten. So I am gonna count all of the books, even if they're hidden behind each other. So that brings us to a total of 20 books on this shelf. I've read Emma. I've read the book of Christmas stories. I actually haven't read most of my modern classic books, so this is gonna be painful. I do have Anna Karenina here twice, so I'm gonna count both of them as read. I haven't read War and Peace yet, but I am planning on changing that this year. I have two collections on this shelf. I have the complete novels of George Orwell and the complete works of Oscar Wilde, both of which I have not completely read, so I am gonna have to count it as unread, but I am gonna count it as just one unread book, because otherwise I'm gonna have to separate all of the volumes, all of the works in the books, and that's just gonna be a mess. That means we have 12 unread books on the shelf, with a total of 20. So unfortunately, again, more unread books than read. So that's 60% unread, which is again above the 50% that we were aiming for. So I'm not doing that well. Let's quickly move on to shelf number 4. Here we actually stop with the classics. I do have some classics left here down below, but this is where the books are that I've recently bought. So what should I categorize this as? I have some fantasy, I have nonfiction, I have a classic, I have more fantasy, contemporary, so it's a mix. I cannot, okay, maybe I should rethink this. There's all sorts of genres, so I cannot really separate them without confusing myself. So I'm just gonna call it shelf 4, and we're just gonna do a percentage per shelf. 6, 9, 10, 15. Okay, so on this shelf we have 18 books. We're starting off with Six of Crows, which I'm actually currently reading. So I am gonna count it as read because I'll have finished this book by the end of the month. So I'm just gonna count it as read. Then we have Swordcatcher, which I haven't read yet. On this shelf are actually my 2026 TBR books, which means that I haven't read them yet, but hopefully by the end of this year, this shelf will be very different and I've read most of them. But for now, this is not looking good because most of these are on my TBR. Right now, it's really devastating. It's looking really bad. I have not read 13 out of the 18 books. So that means I have 72% unread books on this shelf, which is the worst one so far. It's definitely not helping our average. It's not looking like we're going to hit 50%. The first 4 are looking terrible. Oh boy, this is looking really bad. Hopefully the other shelves can redeem me, but this is embarrassing right now. I'm actually having doubts about this video. I don't know if I want to put this online. I don't know if I want to show you that so many books on my shelves are unread. Okay, we're just gonna reframe it and say I have so many books to look forward to, because otherwise I'm just gonna be so embarrassed. This is awful. Let's move on to shelf number 5. Hopefully this one will be better. So here we have shelf number 5. I'm gonna move you down. Okay, welcome to the bottom shelves. You don't see this area often. Don't mind the mess on the floor. We're gonna move to shelf number 5. 16, 17, 18, 19 books on this shelf. Let's see, Norwegian Wood I've read, After Dark I've read, Hear the Wind Sing I've read, If We Were Villains I've read, The Raven King I haven't read yet. The Hobbit I've read, Everything Under I haven't, The Essex Serpent I haven't, the Emily Wilde series I've read, Yellow Face I've read, and Sunrise on the Reaping I've read. So this is actually looking much better. I haven't read 6 out of the 19 books. Okay, let me count that. That is a victory. So this is actually looking really good. I haven't read 6 out of the 19 books on this shelf, which means I haven't read 31%. So that is actually the second shelf on which I have more read books than unread, and 31% is really good. So let's move on to shelf number 6. Here we have just a bunch of genres. We have a classic, we have contemporary, another classic, romance. I don't know what it's doing here, so let's just count them. Frankenstein I've read, The Persia Cafe I haven't read, Leaves of Grass I haven't read yet, The Bell Jar I've read, Nervous Conditions I've read, If Beale Street Could Talk, really want to read that one, White Sargasso Sea, really want to read that one. So that is 14 unread books, 54. So that is cutting it really close. That's just one book unread more than the books I've read. So it's around 50%. I will take that as a win right now because it's not looking good. But yeah, 54 not too bad. So let's go to shelf number 7 already. Let's see, it's down here. This is most of my children's books and then non-fiction. So there are 29 books on this shelf. Oh, that's actually not too bad. I haven't read 12 out of the 29 books on this shelf, which means we have another shelf on which I've read more books than there are unread, with a percentage of 41. So the last 3 shelves have actually looked pretty good. So maybe we can conclude from this experiment that most of my unread books are on my classic shelves, but I also have mostly classic books. Maybe 2026 I can focus on reading more classics. So this shelf number 8, this is mostly contemporary or romance or booktok books. So let's see, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This shelf has 28 books, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 unread, which is exactly 50%. Oh God. So this shelf has exactly as many books read as unread. So then we move on to the last shelf. This is mostly notebooks, cookbooks, school books. So I'm not going to count these, but we are going to count these ones, which are mostly non-fiction, I think. They're kind of tucked away here. They're also stacked on top of each other because there are so many. So let's quickly do shelf number 9. So from these 22 books, 12 are unread, which means 10 are read. So unfortunately, that's more books unread. Again, 55% unread. Okay, I've crunched the numbers, so now it's time for the results. I'm just counting all the books that are on my bookshelves. I do have more books in my room, but these are mostly books from my childhood or just not on my TBR. So we're just gonna use my bookshelves for this one. In total, I have 214 books on my bookshelves, which is insane to me. 214. That feels like a lot. Now I know there's been this challenge on booktube to have like 1,000 books so you can have a library, but I don't think I ever want to own 1,000 books. Like, I do not know what I would do with them. I do not know where I would store them. So to me, 214 is a lot and it's plenty. Maybe it's an unpopular opinion, but for now, I'm completely fine with my 214 books. What I'm not completely fine with though is how many of those are unread. Out of the 214 books that I own, 115 are unread, which brings us at 54% unread. 54%, more than half of my bookcase is unread books. I can't believe it. That really needs to change in 2026. So I'm gonna make it a goal for 2026 to get that percentage down to 50%. However, if you think about it, the Read It or Unhaul It challenges are actually not that productive in getting that number down, because in the Read It or Unhaul It challenges, when I read a book, I can unhaul it, which then removes it from my number of read books on my shelves. Of course, if I do keep the book and I've read it, then it will add to the read books. But if I unhaul it, then I'll be left with a lot of unread books. I don't know if that makes sense. I have 115 unread books, which means that this jar is gonna need an update. Now, as I said, I'm gonna change up the colors. So what I think I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make a separate color for books that I'm really looking forward to, and then also a separate color for books that I'm likely to unhaul. There are just some books on my shelves that are not 5-star predictions, and I feel like a Read It or Unhaul It is a really good video to read those and see if I want to unhaul them. That's kind of in the name. So I'm going to make a separate color. I'm also going to make sure that all of these books in this jar are unread and that all of the books on my shelves are in this jar. So let's get started. Okay, the sun has come through and I have finished making this TBR jar full of all the unread books on my shelves. Now, as you can see, it's not quite mixed yet. On the bottom it has a lot of reds, which represent my classics, and on the top a lot of blues or light blues, which are my non-fictions. So I went from top to bottom of my shelves. I am gonna give this a mix to give it a fair shot of getting any of the books. Now, I said I was going to add 2 new colors, which I did. I added orange for books I'm really excited for and did not have a tag yet, so mostly new books. Then I also added light green, which represents books that I'm more likely to unhaul. At least that's my prediction right now. These are books that are outside of a genre that I usually read or from authors that I've had a bad experience with. So I think the chance is higher that I will unhaul them, but maybe they surprise me and I will really like them. I still want to give them a chance, otherwise I would have not included them in this jar. So that is orange and light green, otherwise the colors are still the same. I will make sure to tell you what the colors are in the next Read It or Unhaul It video, because there are a lot of them. So these are all the books that I haven't yet read that are on my shelves. There are a lot more than I was expecting. The percentage of unread books is also a little bit higher than I was hoping, but hopefully we can change that in 2026. I'm very excited to be making another Read It or Unhaul It in which I can use this jar, but for now I want to thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments how many unread books you have on your shelves, and I will see you in the next video.